What I believe they should leave for is the transparency.
Yeah.
It's not about the rate. It's about how transparent is your company.
Yeah.
Are they showing you everything?
Yeah.
Are they showing you everything that
It's
the
trust.
sauce is made from?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all about the trust.
Yeah.
Because if they're showing you everything that is built in that rate, it doesn't matter if you work at the biggest broker shop or you work at our shop.
Yeah.
Jeff, we can compete.
Yeah.
We can compete. So, that's why I didn't go broke.
Welcome back to the Possibility Podcast, and we're changing things up a little bit from our episodes to date, and we're going to interview a regional of the company, regional vice president based out of Annapolis, Maryland. I've had the pleasure of going to visit their office and some of their realtor partners. And this particular gentleman has been with the company for less than 1 year. And frankly, I want to hear from him why he chose USA and some of the reasons why some of his people like USA. But before we get to that, I want to know a little bit about Bill Sohan. I want to know about his history in the business. And by the way, it's pretty rich. This is a very successful mortgage professional we're talking to today. And for those of you that haven't met Bill, I've already mentioned where he comes from, and you're going to get to know him today because I'm going to ask him all kinds of questions so we get to know him on a personal level as well. So, Bill, welcome to the Possibility Podcast, and thanks for being our first non-corporate person to be a guest on the podcast, my friend.
Oh, man, thanks for having me. That's an honor being the first non-executive. I like it.
Well, I mean, I think the first time I met you, one of the first things you said was, I'm going to have the biggest region at USA Mortgage. And I think you might even put a time frame on it. So I'm now putting that out to the air so that everybody knows it. And now I just put a big old target on your back. I don't think you're too worried about that so much, but you come in with a confidence, but you also come in with a very strong resume. And so tell us a little bit about your upbringing in the business. Where'd you start? Where'd you go? And what led you to where you are today?
Yeah. So I don't know if we want to do a podcast for 3 hours, but I'll try to make it short. So I was born in Queens, New York. Okay. And the reason why I bring that up is after Vietnam, my father went and got a job at a company called Chase Manhattan Bank, which is obviously now part of JP Morgan Chase, right? So my father was in the banking business in Manhattan. I was born in the city, and my father had an opportunity to move what we called back then upstate, which was only about 60 miles north of New York City. So folks don't call it upstate anymore. Now they call upstate New York like Buffalo, but back then they did. So he had an opportunity to go upstate and open up a branch of Chase Manhattan Bank, which he did in a town called Poughkeepsie, again, about 60, 70 miles north of New York City. So my dad did that. Back then, it was a lot of savings and loan type banks. So he went from, this Chase Manhattan Bank to like Poughkeepsie National Bank, Fishkill National Bank, things like that, right? He moved on as the banks, they absorbed each other. There was a lot of absorbing the small local banks all got bought up back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. It still continues today. There are still some local banks that are out there. You see a lot of consolidation over the years. So that's what he did. So I watched my father as a child, say we went to Sears Roebuck, and you'd be walking down the aisle with your dad and all of a sudden and somebody will stop and go, oh, Mr. Bill, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. They talk for a few minutes and he'd know the wife and the kids. And I was always like mesmerized by this. And then we'd walk on. I'd say, hey, Dad, how do you know that? Oh, they live on 128 Maple Street. I did their mortgage a couple of years ago. Their parents are so-and-so, I was mesmerized by it as a child. About 1989 and 1990, my father got out of banking altogether. And he did what a lot of mortgage bankers do, or a lot of bankers do when, they have a nice career in banking. They decide to get in the restaurant business because that sounds like it's a great idea. So my father did get into the restaurant business. We come from a long family of restaurateurs. My grandfather was in the business too. So he wanted to do something that was in his passion, right? So he got into the restaurant business. So I was just graduating high school, just going into college. So I came home almost every weekend, worked in my parents' restaurant. Did that for quite a few years. I did that after college. I did it. And then at about 26, 27 years old, I was seeing all my friends now working, 5, 6 years and working in that restaurant business 7 days a week. Just kind of stunk when I saw my friends starting to do a little bit better, moving out. Again, now all moving back to the New York City, right, and enjoying themselves. So I decided to go and take a job with my friends on Wall Street when I was 28. So I got out of the restaurant business at 28, and I went down there, worked on Wall Street, had a nice time for a while. It was good, and I met my now wife in Baltimore. Again, things were going good in New York. I was really enjoying myself. I enjoyed this freedom of not working in a restaurant. I worked on Wall Street. It's a little more stressful, but you didn't work on the weekend, right? It was nice. And then 9/11 happened. So I did live in New York City. I lived in Hoboken, New Jersey. It was right across the river from New York City, but I did work in New York City during 9/11. And so I don't need to explain that to anybody. It was somewhat of a tragic event for me, being there, seeing it, and then also having your friends that you knew were in the buildings, things like that, right? I only lasted a couple more months after. So it wasn't only I don't want to say it was like a PTSD thing. I don't want to say because it was that tragic. The economy was making quite a turn. There was a dot-com bubble at the time. The position that I had was very affected, and then I was very affected by September 11th. You add on top of it, I had a girlfriend for 1 year in Baltimore. Okay. So doing the commute back and forth, I decided, you know what, I'm going to pack up. I'm going to move the ball. I moved the ball. I have one friend who's in medical sales, and he had a couple friends from his fraternity that had just got into the mortgage business.
What year was this? 2000?
This was in 2002.
Okay.
2002. So it was right after 9/11. I lasted, that was September 9/11. I lasted to about January, February. My wife, who you met, Jill, and I were deciding, all right, somebody's got to move. Either you're moving to New York City or I'm moving in. One of us has to move. The relationship was going on a year. I decided, you know what, I'm moving. And I went down. Again, I had one friend, my friend Kevin. Kevin suggested I join a golf course. I joined a golf course, started playing golf every day, trying to meet people. I'm trying to network. And Kevin introduced me to his college fraternity brother, who had just opened up a branch of a mortgage company. So I've only worked at 3 companies in my entire career, so the USA being the third and the last. But the first one was primary residential mortgage. And you had to put up in 2002, you had to put up a $5,000 bond, and all of a sudden you're in the mortgage business, right? Yeah. It's something ridiculous, yeah. Right? And so I golfed with these 2 fellas who had just opened up a branch of the mortgage business. At least they were in the mortgage business for a year prior. And I told them during golf, which my friend Kevin said to not do. I said, by the way, I want to get in the mortgage business. It had been 4 months since I had worked. Jill was getting really sick and tired of coming home every day from working hard and seeing me on the couch, doing nothing, right? Being burnt, sunburnt from golfing all day, right? And I said, fellas, you got to hire me. And they're like, we just opened. We don't know what we're doing this yet. We're trying to get our feet on the ground. We just opened. I was like, sounds great. I'll be there on Monday. They're like, can't come on Monday. You don't understand. I said, I'll be there on Monday. Jeff, I didn't even own a car. I owned a bike. So I got on my Schwinn on Monday, drove my bike to the other side of Baltimore Harbor, showed up at their office, and they were like, holy shit, he showed up. I'm like, dude, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm starting today. They're like, wait a minute. We can't pay you. I was like, man, don't really care. I'm like, Jill's going to throw me out if I don't get a job. So I'm just going to tell her I'm getting a job. I'm going to come here. Here's the deal. If it doesn't work out after 2 months, you can fire me, but I was never working here. So just let's try to figure out what you're doing. I was like, my dad used to sell loans. How hard could it be? I got to figure it out. You guys are doing it. I'll figure it out. I sold my first loan in my 3rd day. And these guys were like, did he just sell that loan? He don't even know what he's selling. Like, did he just sell that lady a mortgage? And I did. And I liked it, right? I was like enjoyable, you know, give it a couple months. Next thing you know, I'm doing 4 or 5, 6 deals a month. You have to remember 2002, I didn't do loans the right way. We bought leads. Jeff, you remember back then you were able to buy a lead. I think they were like $5 or something. It's not like you spent a lot of money on them. I'd spend $500 a month on leads. I'd get 100 leads faxed over to me 1 page at a time. Yep. Remember, they'd show up to fax. You'd run to the fax to get it, right? And I was closing 5 or 6 deals a month. You know, never counted volume. It was fee based. You know, if you made $2,000 on a deal, end of the month you made $10,000. It was like the best thing ever, right? That's how I got into the mortgage business. We went from a 3-person shop to like a 15-person shop within a year or two. We were like, wow, we could duplicate this. And we hired a bunch of people. And I worked with 2 wonderful guys, 2 friends of mine that became really good friends of mine. We ended up all living on the same street where, by the way, Rosenblatt lived across the street. That's how I met him. We all moved to the same neighborhood. We all got married together. We all had kids together. I worked there for just close to 7 years. I learned a ton. I learned a ton about the mortgage business, but I never learned how to we never did a purchase loan.
Yeah.
You know, never did a purchase loan, you know, and so my father would come and visit again, being that he was in the mortgage business. He couldn't fathom all you do is refinances. You know how dumb that is? Like when refinances dry up, you're not going to have any more loans. I'm like, Dad, you are out of your mind. People are going to refi forever. Okay. Every year. Okay. You refi them, you get their payment down like $2,000 and then they run their credit cards back up and then they call you again. And I'm like, it's going to go on forever. My father was like, it doesn't just go on forever. You should try this purchase business, you know, purchase business. I was like, Dad, you've got to close those on the date they tell you to close them. I'm like, how could you ever close that on the date that they tell you on a contract? I'm like, then you got to deal with these other 2 people, Dad. They're called realtors. They're like crazy. He's like, yeah, Bill, they like become your friends over time. I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay. He's like, no, I did it. I did it for 22 years. What do you mean? I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm like, Dad, I'm doing this refi thing forever. So needless to say, he was right.
Yes. Right. Yes, he was. So I got to ask you a question before we move on to the next place. That first loan that you did 3 days into the business, like I can't even fathom, because I was brought into the business in 2000, which was just as screwed up. I started for a company called AmeriQuest, which was one of the worst. 2-year arms, 3-year prepays. My first day on the job, they had me watch Boiler Room. That was my initiation. Like that's how messed up the industry was, right? So I can't imagine how that conversation even went on that first loan. Do you remember, like, how did you sell something you probably didn't even know what like? I didn't even know what the word equity meant when I got in the business.
Yeah, I didn't know a lot of things. So you're definitely right. I mean, I do feel in this regard, I do feel blessed for coming into the business the way that I did. I worked for these 2 guys, all right, Leander and TJ, who ended up becoming my very good friends, right? I don't know how I stumbled into these 2 fellas, right? I mean, I know I met them on the golf course, but I don't know how I was lucky enough to stumble upon them. Because years later, I learned, not years later, probably 6 months to a year later, I learned what you're talking about. The types of shops that the 1% loan or the no percent loan or the, you know, pick a pay loan and all this other stuff. We didn't do any of it. Like these, I don't want to say we had a written rule or anything, but it was like, we tried to give everybody a fair deal. And back then I had my own rule. My own rule was I was trying to make $2,000 on every deal. Okay. Which that sounds like it's a lot of money back then, but I was trying to make about, you know, 75 basis points to a point on every single deal, which worked out to be about 2,000. I learned later on, there were folks, they're like, we need to make 8 points on every deal. We only need to do 2 deals. Yeah. I want to make 2,000 on every deal, or 1 point, maybe less than 1 point. And I want to do 5 or 6 deals. If I can make $12,000 a month, you're making $145,000 a year. You're living a good life in Baltimore back then. Yeah. My wife's house was $99,000. It's not even, the payment was like $800. It wasn't, like you needed all this money, right? So I feel like I was lucky enough to meet these two guys who taught me from the beginning because I was just a sponge, just listening, right? To do it the right way, because what that set me up for was referrals.
Yeah.
Customers, what? You got to talk to my cousin. You got to talk to my mom. Oh, my aunt. This. We did very well with the referral thing because I just feel like we gave everybody a decent deal. So the woman that called me, and I mean, I'll never forget it. It was a woman who had credit card debt, had lived in her house for a very long time. I didn't know what I was doing, but I did listen to these guys for 3 days on the phone. And I had this sheet of paper that they made me fill out and asking the questions. And it was like a connect the dots thing. If they had good credit and she believed she had equity, we know, star at the bottom. We know we could do the deal. We just got to figure it out. And, so I don't remember what the interest rate was. It was probably 7.5 back then, or 7 or something. What are your credit card? What is your, I owe 26,000 on my credit cards. Oh, geez. Okay. What do you owe on your house? Oh, 160. Oh, okay. So, 186. What do you think it's worth? 325. I know I can do a deal. Okay. You got to give me 15 minutes and I'll call you right back. And of course I hung up. We all work in an office, Jeff, 12 by 14, three guys. So one call can only happen one at a time. It taught me so much, Jeff, because it was far from boiler room, but you knew not to waste time on a call talking about the weather and all the other shit because somebody else had to make a call. They're like, the whole time, right? But I hung up the phone. Both these guys were like, holy shit, you think mortgage has one G? Did you just sell this lady on a mortgage? I was like, somebody's got to figure it out. Somebody's got to tell me how to figure it out. And these guys were wonderful, right?
That's awesome.
They not only figured it all out, they told me what to say. I hung up, I called the lady back. I was like, here's the deal. This is what your payment's going to look like. The lady's like, oh my God, you're saving me $700 a month in payment. I'm like, oh, wonderful. Your interest rate's going to be 7, whatever it was, Oh, this is fantastic. Blah, blah, blah. It was 2002. So interest rates were on the way down. Right. Yeah. So, like when we bought our house, our interest rate was 9.5 on 100,000. So 7 seemed like a great deal back then. So it was easier, but I feel blessed that I learned from these guys. These guys we weren't selling, terrible deals. What these guys taught me was, file stacking, remember when you used to have to do that when you didn't have the compass to put all of it. And literally if I so we had a stacking order on top of a file cabinet that we'd sit there with the paper standing up doing it, right? And if I do it wrong, you had the 2-prong approach with the staple, going through it. You did it wrong, they threw it. So Jeff, there'd be like 100 papers flying all over the office. I'm like, dude, are you shitting me? That took me 40 minutes. Oh, did it wrong, man. Your 4506 is behind your W-2. What's it doing there? It's supposed to be at the end, It taught me all of that.
It's like a trainer. It's like a hardcore trainer. Pick up the weight again.
We were really, really good friends. We joked around a ton. We had a ton of fun. But you want to talk about great training. And I want to say 1 year in, we had 12 of me running around the office. We took the office across the hall, had 12 people. I was like, listen, if we buy 1,200 leads a month and we give them out 100 to each kid, we could do something. And it was it worked. It was great for a long time.
Awesome.
Right. It was great for a long, long time. And then,
what was next? What happened next?
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of very reminiscent of, the next chapter. You had a terrible downturn in the market, just like my father had anticipated.
So
right?
07, 08.
The 07, 08. And, I'd only worked at this one company. They were both based out of Salt Lake City. And a lot of my friends, we had a centralized model. So all your underwriters, your closers, your processors, they all worked in Sandy, Utah, right? And they started hopping over to this other company. And I'm like, what are you guys doing over there? Like, everybody's going over there to work. And when the head of IT left and went over there, this guy, Kyle, who was a good buddy of mine, I was like, Kyle, dude, what is going on? And he's just like, it's different. It was time for a change. And again, I was almost 7 years in at this company. It was time for a change. I called the company. They weren't licensed in Maryland. I called them in like July. Come December, of '08, I was thinking, I'm giving this one more shot to call this company, or Home Depot's looking really good right now for me to get a job. You know, it was bad. I was very lucky again that my wife was in medical sales. So she had a killer job. She was doing great. But Jeff, we in '05, we had just moved into homes that we couldn't afford, right? Like everybody in the mortgage business, right? I bought way too big a home, right? I was not that smart about it. Bought too many cars. I had my original home that my first home that I ever bought in New York. I still own that, and I own Jill's first home that she first bought that was across the street from my house that I didn't need either. I didn't need either one of those homes, you know. So I find this company, and I go to work there, and the first thing they did was, it's time for you. You got to learn how to do purchase business. And again, I was like, man, these people are freaking bananas, but okay. I got a humongous signing bonus to join this company, right? Huge. I was so excited to tell my wife, I go, oh my God, I'm going to this company because they're giving me $4,000. I'm like, honey, I'm at least getting this check for $4,000. I don't care what anybody says. I don't know if this is going to work out, but this guy's willing to give me $4,000. I am totally going.
Wow.
First day, he says, all right, you're signing up for Zinix. I'm like, how do you even spell Zinix? Like, what do you, it starts with an X. What does that even mean? I'm going to teach you the purchase business. We're teaching me the purchase business. Okay, I sign up for the class. I'm sure everybody knows about Zinix. Casey Cunningham, probably a woman who changed my life in this business. Sign up for the class. It's $1,200. So I go to my boss, Bill, who hired me. I was like, Bill, class is $1,200, man. He goes, yeah, what do you think I gave you the $4,000 for? You keep $1,000 of it and then pay the rest to get the Zinix. I'm like, oh, you didn't tell me that when you hired me. I already told my wife I made $4,000. Needless to say, signed up for the class. If you take that class seriously back then, from start to finish, the accountability, I was working by myself at that point, so I didn't have my two friends yelling at me, which I really needed to keep me accountable. Every Wednesday you had the class, you had to be accountable. As you know, you and I are in different classes together. You keep me accountable and you know I do it. Shit, I took that class, man, I learned the purchase business and my business just took off. It really did. So it not only took off in that regard, she gave me the confidence to walk into offices and meet realtors. And I ended up picking up the biggest realtor group in my area, and I ended up getting that desk rental. What did that do for me? No, I didn't make $1 million off the desk rental. I didn't. But I caught the eye of other loan officers that were out there, one by the name of Sam Rosenblatt, right? Who, now, back then, $30 million a year, you did about $3 million a month, $2.5 million a month, only refi. Never did a purchase. No purchase. Okay. But I caught the eye of it. He lived across the street. He's like, how'd you get that account at Reynolds? I was like, believe it or not, I just walked in there and asked for it. You just walked in there and asked for it. I'm like, yeah, I walked in there, started talking to him. You know, this guy, Larry, he was there. He said, okay, you want desk rental? Sure. Okay, great. See you every day. And I started going in there, caught the eye of these folks and was able to build an office, right? And over time, I built one office, got a second office, got a third office, 5 or 6 offices, 7 offices in my area. And one day my boss came in. It's like, I'm retiring. You might have heard me say this at one point, but my boss came from this way of life where every guy needed to wear a suit every day. So I spent a stupid amount of money on suits, which you'll never see me in today, right? And you have to wear a suit. You got a nice, you need a nice handkerchief. You got to be looking good. You got to go to real estate offices every day, right? So I was terrible at it. I did buy the suits. I did somewhat like the clothes for a little bit. But I just, it wasn't me, right, Jeff? You know me. So now it's like, I dress the same as you every day. And he came in one day. He's like, listen, you've opened your 5th or 6th office. I think this business might have passed me by. I'm ready to retire. I'm going to recommend that they promote you. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. No promotion, bud. I'm good. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like promotion means like people are going to start talking to me and then I'm going to be responsible for other things. I'm good with my 6 or 7 offices. I'm doing good. Well, that didn't work. I ended up getting promoted. It worked out well. This is probably 2012. From 2012 to probably 2014 or 15, I ended up getting another promotion. And from that promotion, I went from having those 7 locations to having about 45 to 48 locations. Some I opened, some I didn't open, right? Um,
Across that eastern kind of seaboard
yeah,
area.
it went from Virginia to at the time it went from Virginia to Massachusetts. We didn't have anything in Maine. Um, I ended up going over to Michigan. I think I had 6 or 7 offices in Michigan, wonderful guys and girls that worked there. We had a couple things in Ohio. And I then bled over to Missouri. Great fella that we have in Missouri. Couple in Chicago, couple in Indiana. And it was a really good gig. It was probably between that we called it a district manager job. That district manager job, that role between a district manager, so saying having 15 branches to the regional manager having 40, let's just say. Those were 2 of by far my best jobs I ever had in my career. Okay. In this role, in a regional manager role, to make a living, I don't want to say to make great money, but to make a living, you've got to be humming at 60, 70, $80 million a month to make a living, right? Especially if you were a producer, just say very simply, if you're making 100 basis points and you're doing $40 million a year, you're making 400,000. You're going to try to make that and duplicate that as a regional. You better be doing a whole lot more than $40 million a year in volume. You better be doing close to 300-400 million, right? You got to get it up to that level to be humble. So I didn't come here and meet you and say, I'm going to be your number 1 regional because I got some big ego. I do have a big ego, but I just know what it takes to be successful in this role. That's what I mean by it.
So at your previous company, you then got the multiple promotions, but you ended up being almost as high as you can go at one time, right?
Yeah, 2018, we had a let's call it a change of the guard at the top, and the owner of my company decided that he was going to change things up. The company was getting pretty large. We were doing about $10 billion a month. I mean, $10 billion a year. He decided that one person being the head of production was too much. It was a very good move on his part. He decided to split it up to 3. So his idea was one person needed to stay at the home office. One guy runs the West, one guy runs the East. So I got promoted my last time to head of production of the East. Right?
Wow.
I enjoyed all my jobs since I started. Okay. I might have enjoyed that job the least. Okay. I worked my entire career hoping to become the head of production until you get the almost the top job. That job sucks, by the way. Sucks. Incredibly stressful. I was incredibly unhealthy, terribly stressful. And then you throw in COVID. That first quarter of COVID, in my entire career, I had not been yelled at by any superior. And boy, I probably got yelled at 3 times within 2 months, and justifiably yelled at, okay, by my CEO or my president. They both yelled at me. So, and again, justifiably yelled at, right? That's how stressful of a job it was, right? Now, golden parachute on the backside of that, right? Business turned around, we're not going to close, and all of a sudden you're sprinkling fairy dust all over the place, and there's money coming in all over the place, right? So sure, it worked out, but outside of the working out part, the reason you go to work every day wasn't there being on top, right? I really do love the job that I'm in right now. I love the job that I was in below this job. Like you haven't met him yet, but my buddy Craig, who has 5 branches, I love that job. That job is by far my favorite job. You want to affect the day-to-day activities of your loan officers and your processors and the lives of their families, have that job, because you can directly affect your community and the people that work alongside you in that job. The higher you get, it's harder to show them, right, what you're about. You're just some boss who's getting paid, right, on their volume, and you don't do anything all day. I don't want to say that that's how everybody thinks, but that's how a lot of people think. That's how I thought. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not talking poorly about them. That's how I thought. Yeah. So now here you are. I did the job through 2018, 19, 20, 21, end of 21. My old position becomes available to become a regional manager again, and I bowed out. And I did that for about one more year, and then I decided, I was ready for a change. That's what I decided. I was ready for a change. 15 years at my almost 15 years. I think it was like 14 years, like 8 months at my prior company, but I was ready for a change. I needed that change.
So what did that look like? So when you determined that, in the shortest way possible, what was that vetting process like for you that ended up, bringing you to USA?
So it's crazy. You're out there talking to a whole bunch of different companies. I've been fortunate enough to be in some really good coaching programs. Building Champions was one of them. So I had a pretty diverse group of friends who had top jobs nationwide. So I did talk to a lot of them, but I talked to a lot of them as friends. Like, what are you looking for? And I wasn't looking for that big company. A lot of people like to go and work for those big companies. My past company, in my opinion, was a top 20, top 15 big company. I wasn't looking for that anymore. I was looking more for a smaller company, but had all the luxuries of a big company. You know what I mean? So I looked at a lot of small independents. I almost went down the road. Jameson, who works for me, he and I had decided early on that we were going to partner together. He was thinking about making a move. He and I were already friends. I was thinking about making a move. He was thinking about making a move. We talked a lot. We went out a lot. We talked to people, maybe at different times, same people at different times. I thought about buying a company. So I came close to buying into a company. He and I came really close to buying into a company. And then I was lucky enough. I think Brooke used to work at Academy. She worked for me for 5 years, worked at Academy for close to 6. And she said, just fly out here to St. Louis and talk with these folks. I think you're going to like what they said. I did go and fly out there almost as a favor to her. And then when I got there and met, Linda's what sold the deal. Like, I'm not going to sit here and bullshit, right? Linda sold the deal. When I sat there across from Linda and heard her talk and where she came from, and then her vision of the future, and then, my son's going to take the company from there, blah, blah, blah. And then meeting Ron, I was like, wow, this is not the normal, parent-child transition. The child is normally a douche, right?
Yeah.
95% of the time, right? You get Ron, you're like, wow, is this for real? Then you get the fact that most of the folks that work there, you take Danny in their 21 years since she's like 19 years old.
Yep.
That's what I'm used to, right? Had only been working at 2 companies in my entire career. That's what I was used to, right? And you see all the people that have worked there 10, 15 years. You're like, well, they obviously are selling something good if all these folks are working here. Then you meet Bobby in secondary. You meet Jason. I was sold by the people, but what was I striving? You're going to ask me, what was I striving to find? I was trying to find a place that I think that I could recruit to. I think that I can duplicate what I did before. That's what I'm looking for. One thing that benefit that I had was all the different types of people that I've hired over my career at all the different companies. One thing seems to be consistent across the board: non-transparency. They can tell you, like, hey, your rate is built on the margin and your comp, and then this, your branch margin. most of them, Jeff, are full of shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Every time I go to recruit somebody, we sit down, we do the OBs, blah, blah, blah. I have the raw rate sheet that USA gives us. I have the margin that we put in there and whatnot. And I'm like, they're telling me what their margin is. And I'm like, oh, you're off by about 125 basis points. What do you mean? I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, but it's right here. I'm not making it up. That's most companies, almost all.
Yeah.
I didn't meet a lot, Jeff, that did not do it that way. Okay. And that's what I was looking for. Somebody that was going to be transparent. If it's bad, just tell me it's bad. And then let's try to talk through it. Right. And most companies, they tell you they're transparent and they're not. USA is transparent. Not to mention, you got incredible people working there. Right. There's something about Midwesterners, by the way. They're wonderful people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I second that.
There's not a ton of people from Queens, New York that I feel like working for. Okay. These Midwesterners, they're just like wonderful people. Right. You add the transparency bleeds into the rates. Right. You're able to give folks the rate they deserve, the rate that they can sell, right? You add the most incredible recruiting platform. Marketing platform that I've ever seen, right? And I came from a place where I thought that marketing was the best in the world. I was wrong. They back it up, right? Now we're in a downturn. We're in 2024, and most marketing departments, they get cut. They're closed. No more marketing. We're closed. We fired everybody. Not this company. We just keep on adding more and more and more ideas. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Then I also, when you work so long at one company and you think your operations is better, my operation is better than anybody else. Nobody can beat our operations. We all believe that. Very untrue. I know my ops manager. She might be one of the brightest individuals I've ever met in my entire life. So you put all of that stuff together. I could sell it, right? I could get behind it. And I feel like now I can change the lives of my employees by offering and delivering on my promises. Mm-hmm. That's what I was looking for. A company that I could do all that. I also needed a company that was going to be able to be a fit for a lot of different misfits, right? You have a guy that does $100 million a year. You have one that does 7. You have one that does 40. Not all companies can figure that out.
Yeah.
Right. I think this company, has welcomed the guy like, Sam came here a month before I did, but still, I think they've welcomed him. And the support is there just as much as somebody that does 7 or 8 million. They welcome them. I get the same response at our sales meetings.
Yeah.
Right. Like, wow, Laura calls you back too. Yeah. She calls everybody back. You don't have to do 10 million a month to get a call back. You can do 500,000 a month and get a call back. That's not common out there.
It's interesting. I have one question about that because I know we're running up on time. In fact, let me just go ahead and give you an applause to let you know you're going to be the longest podcast we've recorded. So congratulations. First outside corporate and first and the longest. So you're just breaking records today. But I know time is tight, but I want to ask you a couple questions. Number one, in this time when there's a lot of movement, because it's just difficult when things get tough, people tend to just play the blame game, right? And it's the company's fault. They don't look in the mirror. But the bigger question here is a lot of people are making the move based upon rate. And that therefore is leading them to broker. You had that opportunity. Why didn't you choose broker in a time like this when rate is incredibly important because it is such a tight market?
Again, I want to duplicate what I did at my last company, right? And if I want to change the lives of as many people I possibly can, though the broker, it's not an option. I just want to be a loan officer and try to make the most amount of money on one deal. Being the broker, so is the option to go to, right? But you're not going to be able to create, a business model, a successful business model built upon, say, 100 or 200 LOs. Say I work for another 10 years. I plan on, maybe I'll tell everybody at USA this, but I plan on, hiring a few hundred loan officers. You're not hiring more than 10 loan officers as a broker.
Yeah.
And I'm not in this game to just make money for me. That's what you do when you're a broker. You're looking to make as much possible money as you can for yourself. That's not what I'm looking to do. I've been blessed. I've been very lucky to make good money throughout my career. I had some great jobs, and I had, my top job, I happened to be in the right seat at the right time, right? I'm looking to change lives. That's what I'm looking.
Yeah.
Right. I'm also looking to have fun, right? Broker, you're your own processor. Who knows what the underwriter is going to take, you know? Let's face it, you missed one settlement. Next thing you know, you lost your referral partner. What I'm saying, I really enjoy the job that I have. I just went out with Jameson and two realtors, right? I love the fact, like I told you, tomorrow I'm flying to Florida to meet with Jameson's biggest builder. Couldn't do that if we didn't. I don't know if your loan's going to close tomorrow.
Yeah.
I got to wait for, SWA to get back to us or some name, some broker.
Yeah.
You can't. It's not the rate game. I don't really believe that anybody should lead for the rate. Obviously, it's a lot easier for me to say that than anything. Sure. Okay, but what I believe they should lead for is the transparency.
Yeah.
It's not about the rate. It's about how transparent is your company. Yeah. Are they showing you everything?
Yeah.
Are they showing you everything that the sauce is made from?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all about the trust.
Yeah.
Because if they're showing you everything that is built in that rate, it doesn't matter if you work at the biggest broker shop or you work at our shop. Yeah. Jeff, we can compete.
Yeah.
We can compete. So, that's why I didn't go broker.
Got it. I love it. I love it. Good answer. So we'll wrap this up with some personal questions because it's always fun to get to know people. I already mentioned you're from Annapolis, and I've gotten to know you a little bit. So I know that you like to restore Broncos and that you own a center console and you're a wannabe crabber and you have a second home in Naples, Florida. What would you say of if I ask the question, like, what is your favorite thing to do in your free time? What is that answer?
That's, it's just hanging out with my family and any of those things that you just said, right? Jeff, I'm getting older now. I'm going to be 52 this year. My daughter, as you know, goes to San Diego. We're going out there to see her next weekend. What was my passion before? As the kids were growing up, it was coaching. I loved coaching. I didn't care what it was. Sometimes I was good at it. Sometimes I wasn't so good. It's a fact you're showing up, right? So, if you get me in the fall, what is my passion? What do I love doing? I love watching my son play football. That's what I love doing. You do it every day. It'd be awesome. You get me in the summertime, you nailed it, right? I love being at my summer house. I love crabbing with my buddies. I love hanging out with the whole family. I love I'm lucky enough that I bought a house that my entire family loves to come to all the time. Nothing makes me happier. My daughter's coming home from college. Two of her girlfriends, they're going to stay at my house all summer. Great. It's safe. They're going to work across the street. Oh, it's across the water, right? They're going to walk around the water, work at a restaurant, safe, right? I know they only got to walk home. That's what I love doing.
Nice.
I
love it. I love it. What's your go-to?
I'll throw Broncos in there every now and then, too, because I do love my Broncos. But
that's a unique hobby.
Yeah, that I do. But that I like driving, not working on. But anyway,
what's your go-to meal?
Dude, this fat guy. Did I tell you my dad got in the restaurant business after the Borders business?
Yeah, you did. And now I'm telling you, you're on death row, and you can only choose one item for your final meal. What is it?
Chicken Parmesan. That's it.
Chicken Parm. That was easy.
Chicken Parmesan. If I'm going to die in 2 days, I'm doing chicken Parmesan and pizza. Okay.
All right. What's your drink? One drink.
Come on. Do you know how USA courted me over?
Go on.
Did you hear that story?
No.
Yeah. They sent me 2 cases of Tito's handles with my face on. Okay. So marketing made a sticker over to Tito's, okay, with my face on it and sent it to my house.
Tito's and soda?
It was, yeah. So when it gets delivered to my house, I open it up. I couldn't even believe it, right? I have it on my dining room table. My wife comes home, again, beach place, right? Blah, blah, blah. She sees it. The bows are all on it. My picture's on it, right? On and on and on. She's like, you have got to work there. They understand you. They understand you. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I've never had anybody send me Tito's. I never had anybody send me a gift before, right?
That's funny.
But yeah, my go-to drink is Tito's. You know,
I love it. I love it, dude. I love it. And if you're ever in Annapolis, you got to get Bill to take you to the yacht club, because that was an incredible time, and an incredible
oh, you
gentleman.
got to come in the summertime, right? We hit it when it was freezing out, but got to come in the summertime, Jeff. We'll get you back. We'll get you on that center console,
Deal,
without
deal,
the Tito's, and I'm telling you, you'll absolutely love it.
deal. Bill, it's been a pleasure, man. This is, like I said, longest podcast, well worth it. Great story, covered everything. I
I
appreciate you,
value
man.
our
This is
friendship,
a good
buddy.
story. It's a good
I do.
story. It's a good story. Thank you for sharing, and look forward to doing this again sometime, brother.
My pleasure, buddy. Good talking. Thanks for having me.